Okay, so today's video is actually a culmination of something that's been in the works for quite some time. If you're not familiar with my channel, I have the DWRDNET Stationery Feed, which is a video podcast where I interview different people from the pen and stationery community and hobby as a whole, and that's what led to this pen being created. So a while back, I interviewed Lisa Marie from Poorly Controlled, who does blank pouring. And it turns out, as I've done these interviews, by happenstance, I've ended up owning something that each of these individuals has made, or I already owned it in advance. I didn't own anything made out of a blank from Poorly Controlled, so I felt that was something that needed to be remedied. So enter this pen. If you're not familiar with this logo, this is the Pens by Pasquale logo, who Nick is local-ish to me. And he happened to have some of the materials on hand from Poorly Controlled. So this is actually going to be my first fully commissioned pen out of a blank of my choosing from the materials he had on hand from Lisa Marie. So let's open this up and take a look. So you got a couple of stickers here, and I'll put these over just so you can see on the side camera here. He's got his card. I'm just here for the stickers and then the logo. But let's get to the more important part. I mean, the stickers are always a big deal, but this is the important part. This model is known as the Cerberus, and the camera is not going to do full justice on this because it is a 12-side faceted finish that's highly polished, and I'll try and hold it over to the side camera just to get a better showing of what this material looks like. But there's so much more in this that the camera doesn't really pick up. Seeing this outside in the sunlight, it's like a whole different pen. But the blank has so much characteristic to it. I love that the inner colors, this blank is known as Bourbon and Smoke. And this is one that Lisa Marie offers through her website, poorlycontrolled.com. And then the Cerberus, this was one of Nick's, I believe, his first faceted pen model. And after seeing one of the early ones in person, I was like, eventually I'm going to own one of those. So this seemed like the great occasion to combine these two and end up with this pen. So let me open it up here. It is a twist to close. And let me see here. You can see the nib is engraved with the Pens by Pasquale logo. This is an extra fine, of course, as you would expect from pretty much any pen I have that's not one of my testing pens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this inked up, just do a little bit of writing. This is a Bach number 6, so nothing crazy in terms of the nib. Nick does include a converter with his pins, but the finish on this, and it looks like a beefy pen, but it's actually quite light. So I think it's going to be a great writer. So let me grab an ink. Now that I've got a little bit of a better chance to look at this blank in this light, I think I don't want to go with a brown. I already have a couple of browns and pens. I'm thinking a gray. So I've got a couple different options. So let me look at some cards. And I'll be right back, and we'll get this inked up and do a quick little writing sample. Okay, so I'm back. I got a ink, and let's get this filled up and take a look. To start out, the ink that I'm going to be using is by Papier Plume, and this is actually their Oyster Gray. I think the undertones, and there's some silver shimmer that's kind of nested in this blank that you don't really see in the camera, unfortunately, but it does come out in the sunlight. I think that's going to be a nice mixture for the undertones. That seems to be a common theme lately as I've been choosing inks. I've been going more for the undertones of the material versus the main colors. So it's complementary and not a direct match. So it seems like that theme is holding true. So we'll stick with it. Let's go on and get this out. And this is an older ink that I've owned for a while. I swatched it recently, so I know it's still got true color. But I did kind of agitate the bottle some just to make sure that Now, what I might run into is not being able to get the nib down. There we go. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to get the nib far enough in because it's a shorter bottle, but angling it looks like it worked. Let me get this wiped off and we'll grab some paper. And like I said, not a really involved writing sample because this is a standard, extra fine, no special grind, Bach number 6. But it's always good to record the first time of using a brand new pen, especially my first ever truly 100% commissioned pen, which is kind of a milestone of sorts, I guess you'd say. I own other maker pens, but not one that I've gone to the level, I want this pen and this finish type thing. So it is a neat threshold to cross, and I'm sure it will not be the last fully commissioned pen, but you have to start somewhere, I guess. So what I'm going to use for paper is from the Yamamoto Jotter system. I've got one of the little tablets, and this is the Sheep Cloud Bond paper. So I thought that would be a good one to use just for some of this. It's in the Bible size. And I'll put a link, a little card, and a link in the description to the Yamamoto video where I did this for the initial testing. Just so if you haven't seen that, you can take a look and learn more about this system as well. Okay, so let's see how this goes here. Hopefully this ink cooperates. So we got the Papier Plume Oyster Gray. Pens by Pasquale. And this model is the Cerberus. And then the blank is Bourbon and Smoke. From Poorly Controlled. So I'll hold this over, like I said, not the craziest writing samples, just due to this being kind of a standard nib configuration. But as you can see here, that is a nice colored gray ink, and I do think it matches the undertones. See if I can hold this all in the right place. It's going to match the undertones of the material pretty well, just to kind of bring through. And with the name Bourbon and Smoke, a smoky gray ink did seem appropriate as well. So that also factored into which one I chose. And you can see it's a nice extra fine line, as you'd expect. I believe Nick gets his nibs engraved through Kirk Spear. And I believe Kirk tunes nibs before he sends them out. So that's always nice to have a nibmeister having looked at the nib before you receive it. It's a nice little perk as well. And with it extra fine, kind of standard writing. This is nice and, everything I would expect from a Bach number 6. Very similar to all the other ones that I have. So this is a nice writing experience, it's good when it meets the expectation. That's one thing with the Jowo 6s or Bach 6s. You kind of know what you're going to get for a stock nib, and this does fit that description for me. So that's always nice to have that. And I'm just coloring in a little bit here. This will help show the color a little better, because with an extra fine nib, you don't get as much ink on the paper, but I think this is going to, because this is what I would call a bluish gray, like more of a cool gray color. And I think it's going to show really well when using this on like journal paper or other things. You can see that's a nice bluish gray as it dries down. So it's going to be a nice ink to pair with this pen. So, and I'm going to put links to the interviews I did with both Lisa Marie and Nick. They were some of the earlier ones in the interview series of the 20 episodes. So be sure and check those out if you haven't, just to kind of learn more about how both of those businesses came to be and what their plans are for the future, and how a pen model like this came to exist. So do you own any of the poorly controlled materials in any of your maker pens? Would be one question I'd love for you to leave an answer to in the comments. Or do you own a pen that Nick has made by Pens by Pasquale? Leave that in the comments as well. It's always interesting to see how people come across their various pens from different makers, especially for me with Nick, with him being a local to me maker. That adds some extra intrigue of how did someone around the country end up with a pen made in the middle of Tennessee. That's always unique to me to hear those stories. So leave those down in the comments, and I'd love to hear your stories and respond back also if you have any questions as well. If you wouldn't mind clicking the like button on this video if you found it informational or interesting, that really would help out the channel. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.